So today in this video, I wanted to take some time to give you some context around one song and specifically, O Splendidissima Gemma, to be able to set this up and to present some musical excerpts from this piece as well. But we also have a special treat. 2 weeks ago, I had the honor of speaking with Professor Barbara Newman, one of the foremost experts on Hildegard's poetry and her life. And Professor Newman spoke specifically to this piece. In fact, she read her own translation. And I wanted to present that for our audience as well, because I think it was so special. And it's a really interesting and wonderful thing to hear this author speak to Hildegard's poetry. So, let's talk about this piece. O Splendidissima Gemma is one of what we call the Symphonia. The Symphonia is a group of songs that Hildegard wrote. We have 77 still preserved in manuscript form, which is astonishing for music that is 900 years old, let alone music that was penned by a woman in the 12th century. So, in every way, this is an extraordinary thing. The music that we hear is really keyed to various times and feasts and places where we have different themes coming up for all of these different songs. This song is a Marian song, and I think it's interesting because it's a group of 8 songs that actually are tucked into the first of Hildegard's visionary works, the Scivias. The Scivias was really the defining sort of moment in her adult life where she heard the prophetic call to write down her visions, and she wrote this book. It took 10 years, and it consists of 26 visions of profound power and insight. This song happens to be the first in this group of what we call Scivias songs, and it's found at the end of book Vision 13 in the Scivias. And it's remarkable to hear how the song comes about. It's heard in the sky with all of the company of heaven singing the song. And what we see in the song are these beautiful images of Mary being compared to a resplendent gem or jewel. What we also hear in the song is the contrast of Mary with Eve, and the sin of Eve. And this particular dichotomy is something that we're really looking at this season through our programming, especially in our final performance on November 20th of our Beguiled program, where you will hear the song in its entirety. But I wanted to read you the opening of Vision 13, and then I want to segue into Professor Newman's explication of this text, which is just the most wonderful thing. And here I invite you to listen with your heart, to hear these words and to see what comes up for you, to see the vision in all its images and symbols and how we experience this with our senses. So here we go. This is Vision 13 from the Scivias, entitled Symphony of the Blessed. Then I saw in the lucent sky, in which I heard different kinds of music, marvelously embodying all the meanings I had heard before. I heard the praises of the joyous citizens of heaven, steadfastly persevering in the ways of truth, and laments calling people back to those praises and joys, and the exhortations of the virtues, spurring one another on to secure the salvation of the peoples ensnared by the devil. And the virtues destroyed his snares, so that the faithful at last, through repentance, passed out of their sins and into heaven. and their song like the voice of a multitude, making music in harmony, praising the ranks of heaven, had these words. And there follows a splendidissima gemma. So now I invite you to listen to Professor Barbara Newman for her words on this piece.
This one is called O Splendidissima Gemma, O Most Resplendent Jewel, and it honors the Virgin Mary. And so I'm just going to read it in my poetic translation, which is a bit free, and then I just want to run through it and show you how the imagery works. And since your theme is Even Mary this year, this is about Even Mary. Resplendent jewel and unclouded brightness of the sunlight streaming through you, know that the sun is a fountain leaping from the Father's heart, his all-fashioning word. He spoke, and the primal matrix teemed with things unnumbered, but Eve unsettled them all. To you, the Father spoke again, but this time the word he uttered was a man in your body. Matrix of light, through you he breathed forth all that is good, as in the primal matrix he formed all that has life. Okay, so this song plays on the opposition, but also the continuity of Eve and Mary, the two archetypal women. Eve, the first created, was the prima materia, the first matter, the primal matrix of all creation. But Eve fell. Eve turbavit, Eve troubled, Eve unsettled the whole creation through her fall. And so God started over. And he started over with Mary. And Mary is the lucida materia, the luminous matrix. And I chose the word matrix here because, like the Latin word materia, it means matter, but it can also mean womb. And Mary is the womb of creation, the luminous, the light-filled womb. And through her, God breathed again. He breathed into her, expiravit. Hildegard loves verbs of breathing. Inspiravit, to breathe in, to inspire. Expiravit, to exhale, to breathe forth. And so he breathed into her Jesus, his own child, his own spirit-filled son, whom she then released into the world. And when that happened, Mary brought into the world all the virtues. And virtues are not just moral qualities, they're energies, they're forces of divine life, they're living power. And so in Mary, he renews, perfects, and fulfills everything that he first created in Eve. And you notice also, Mary is called a jewel, a resplendent gem. Why is this? Because a jewel shines with the light of the sun. And so Mary is so pure, so luminous and radiant, so unclouded, that divine light shines right through her. And this makes her sparkle. This makes her gem-like. And what is the sun that shines through her? The sun is God. And in English, you can do something Hildegard couldn't do in Latin. You can play on sun and sun, the sunlight in the sky, the Son of God. But what she says is that the sun, meaning Christ, meaning the Word, is a fountain leaping up from the heart of the Father, as in John's Gospel. The Word, the water that I shall give you will become a fountain leaping up in your heart into eternal life. And so that's one example of what she does. Here, the notion of Mary as a jewel is not unique to her. The contrast of Eve and Mary is certainly very commonplace, but she weaves it together in an almost synesthetic way, in a very compressed and poetic way. And that's just one example of her poetic art in this song.
I just loved that conversation with Dr. Newman. And now I wanted to walk us into the music a little bit here, because what we have is a piece that is quite maverick in its structure and in its sound world. And so as Hildegard is writing these songs, we know the source is a vision. And as she even says in her own words, in this very same vision, that the words in the music are the words being the body, the music being the spirit, that they're intricately entwined. And it's really quite a joy to see how Hildegard composes these two things together. I liken this pairing to a double helix of DNA, where the words and the music are interwoven in a harmonious and very intimate and symbiotic dance, if you will. So here we have a splendidissima gemma, which is set in the Phrygian mode. And I have my keyboard here, and I'd like to play that for you. And the Phrygian mode is, it has a final of E, or the tonic. And in this mode, which Hildegard uses frequently, it really has a quite extraordinary effect on the senses. But what you hear throughout this entire piece is the constant shift. It's not just a chant that's settled in one mode, but it constantly shifts down one step to D or Dorian, and then back to E. So we're constantly shifting back and forth between these two modes, and it's not clear why, but it's one example of how she's really truly personalizing her compositions to really serve the affect of the text and the spirit. And there's a couple of other things here that I wanted to present to you, and I'm only going to present the first half of this. It's a longer piece. This is an antiphon, which would have been connected with a psalm throughout some part of the liturgy. But here, as you heard in Dr. Newman's talk, she talks about the fountain springing. And here, what you have in Hildegard's very unique way is a beautiful painting of that. Here, listen to this. So here are the words fons, saliens, a fountain springing. You hear this. You hear this very ecstatic jump. It's sudden and it's bold. And you can just imagine the image of the water, of that fountain really leaping, and then what? Cascading back down. And that's one example of how she uses musical imagery in her songs. So one of the things I wanted to show you was the original manuscript of this piece. Here I'm going to show you in this next image here the folio from the first of the two musical manuscripts that preserve Hildegard's music, known as the Dendermonde Codex. And here you see this beautifully preserved folio. You see the O, the initial O, is outlined in red. And here we have, this is not the entire piece, but this is the first section that you'll hear. you have a special notation known as Hofnagel notation, or horse-nail. And these marks are called neumes. And this was the notational vocabulary of her time and place, specifically in the region where she lived. And it's really a great privilege of mine as a medievalist, as an interpreter of medieval music, to interpret these neumes. They all have specific functions in terms of the pitch, but there's an infinite variety of interpretation. So what I would like to do is sing a little bit with my very contemporary keyboard to help me outline these mode shifts for you and to be able to follow along in the score. So what you will be able to hear is this piece in its entirety on November 20th, and to please follow along with what A is doing for the next coming weeks as we build up to that performance. There's a lot more learning and sharing to happen, and it's truly our privilege and pleasure to share this music with you. So I'm going to bring us back to the score. Oh, splendidissima, gemma et quod est unicum verbum suum per quod creavit mundi And I hope you were able to follow along in the text and the music to see how all of these neumes start to take shape and start to unfold in such a beautiful and unique way. I want to say thanks for joining me today. I hope I piqued your interest in this astounding music. And I really, really encourage you to keep in touch and follow what we're doing here at AS Central. And please reach out if you have any questions. Or come join us at our next event, Monday night at 7:30 Eastern Time. We're having our second workshop, and we're going to learn how to sing this music from the original notation that you just saw. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. I hope you have a great one, and thanks for supporting AF.